My favorite game of all time, Dishonored, is having a moment on social media in the Lord's year of 2026. Let's fucking go. A lot of people may not know, but this is my favorite game of all time. I've mentioned it before, but it's not like I'm known for playing it or anything, though I do talk about it all the time and compare a lot of games that I play to it. I've been long thinking about how I can make a video on this incredible game, series really, because its follow-ups are also amazing and worth talking about as well. But this is not that video. Instead, this is me excitedly jumping the gun and talking about the conversation around Dishonored online, how excited I am to see this game back in the zeitgeist even a little bit, and how a tiny little shred of copium that we may someday see another Dishonored game has turned into a bigger but still really tiny shred of copium that we may someday see another Dishonored game. First of all, if you're unfamiliar, Dishonored is a game, or series rather, of stealth action immersive sims, if you prefer that term, made by Arkane Studios. The games mainly follow Corvo Attano, the once bodyguard of the Empress turned assassin, or not, depending on how you play, by her murder and subsequent framing of him as the killer. And an encounter with this godlike figure known as the Outsider grants him special void powers like the game's iconic blink teleport ability. This game features a series of open-ended levels with assassination targets that are totally up to you how you approach. You can leave a trail of bodies a mile long, or you can spare absolutely everyone and never once get detected, and absolutely everything in between. The games are a real high watermark of stealth immersive sim design with some of the coolest levels of all time, and emergent gameplay moments all along the way. And if any of that sounds cool to you and you for some reason haven't played these games, let this sudden random resurgence in their popularity be your reason to check them out. Now, this whole thing began with this tweet from Bell on April 25th, which is a screenshot of the opening view of Dishonored's first major level, High Overseer Campbell, with the caption reading, "This game has so much sauce, man." Yeah. Maybe just because I interact with a good amount of immersive sim content on Twitter, but I saw this pretty early on and used it as a springboard to say that this is my favorite game of all time, and I hope to make a big video on it this year. Again, this is not that video. I'll talk more about my plans for that later on. But from there, the hits just kept coming. Arkane themselves responded to the original tweet saying, "Thanks for playing." The Bethesda and Xbox accounts were getting in on it as well. And this just in general got the ball rolling on all kinds of spirited and positive discussion about the fantastic game Dishonored. Lots of people playing it for the first time, lots of people picking it back up after a long time. The original game director, Rafael Colantonio, taking the opportunity to talk more about the game and even potentially record a playthrough of it with co-director Harvey Smith. Awesome, I hope that sees the light of day. I have so much to say about Dishonored, but like I said, I will probably save most of that for an exhaustive video for my main channel. But for now, I want to talk about where the Dishonored franchise is at the moment, at least from where I see it, what we know about the possibility of another sequel, if anything, and how one unassuming tweet might have actually gotten this franchise slowly but surely moving away from the brink of death. Let's get one thing straight. Dishonored 3, or any manner of Dishonored spin-off, in-universe game, what have you, is not currently in development as far as anyone outside of Arkane Studios and Microsoft knows. And in addition to that, it's very unlikely, just looking at widely available facts, that there is one secretly in development either. Though a Dishonored 3 may have been in development at one time, it no longer seems to be the case anymore as of recording this video. Arkane Austin, who was most notably behind Prey and the ill-fated Redfall, is now shut down. And while the studio, as it was right before being canned, was very different from that which made the original Dishonored, this was essentially one half of the studio that contributed to that original game. A huge loss regardless of how you feel about a game like Redfall. The Dishonored sequel and Death of the Outsider spin-off would largely fall to the Leone arm of the studio. This part of the studio still exists. We know for a fact that Arkane Leone is working on the upcoming Marvel Blade game, though studio director Dingo Bacava tends to like to keep the door open on a future for Dishonored, disputing that the series was formally on hold as recently as 2020. Though in 2023, leaks would suggest that at some point a Dishonored 3 had been in some stage of early development at the time of Microsoft acquiring Bethesda. No more information than that is really known about it, and it seems to have been canceled or quietly shelved in the absolute most optimistic of terms. The last game bearing the Dishonored title was 2017's standalone expansion to Dishonored 2 called Death of the Outsider. But the most recent media taking place in the Dishonored universe is, interestingly enough, Deathloop, with references you can find within the game suggesting that the game takes place in a distant future of the Dishonored universe and somewhere near Tivia. To call Deathloop a spiritual sequel to Dishonored or a continuation in any way would be disingenuous. It's a separate game that has some nods and Easter eggs relating to Dishonored. And Deathloop itself seems to face very little chance of continuing as a story and universe anyways. But it is at least confirmed to exist within this same universe, which to me is a good sign that Arkane is still thinking about and still wants to tell stories within this universe in some way, shape, or form. But a direct continuation of Dishonored as we know it is also a bit murky. The resolutions of the stories of Emily, Corvo, Dowd, Billy Lurk, and The Outsider, really any of the main casts that could have been a consideration for some kind of direct story continuation, are all pretty unambiguously complete in various ways, leaving only a prequel of sorts as an option. But even then, according to Dingo Bakaba, were the series to continue, it would almost definitely focus on new protagonists anyways, which is my personal preference if I'm being honest. A new corner of the world, new list of terrible people, new weird stories to tell. My personal contribution to the spirited discussion of Dishonored was to highlight that the world it takes place in is massive and the well of intrigue is surprisingly deep. Dishonored 1 takes place in Dunwall, which is the capital of the Empire situated at the south of the Isle of Gristle. Then Dishonored 2 and Death of the Outsider take place in Karnaca, situated on the smaller Isle of Serkonos. This is a remarkably small glimpse at even just the Isles, which is the main populated part of Dishonored's world, with most of the Isle of Gristle, as well as the entirety of both Morley and Tivia, the latter being the birthplace of Anton Sokolov, being completely unexplored, at least physically, within the games. Dishonored 2 revealed just how diverse and interesting the locations within this empire could be, and that's without even considering that the Isles themselves are a relatively small corner of this world, being absolutely dwarfed by the mysterious uninhabited Pandician continent. Now, before I get too ahead of myself, I think a third Dishonored game being anything other than a stealth immersive sim would be a huge shame to a lot of people. But I do think the broader point I'm illustrating is that the potential for more games and stories in this world is massive and untapped. A game on Pandacia would pretty much have to be very different. I would be interested to see how it could be approached, but even just another setting within the Isles could be fascinating. I'm not completely opposed to revisiting Dunwall either, I guess. Karnaca feels explored to its full potential between Dishonored 2 and its expansion, but it's been long enough since we've been back to Dunwall, and there's clearly enough going on and changing in the city for it to maybe be justified. I'd prefer a different setting, but I'd take what I can get. Just how likely even is a Dishonored sequel, though? I mean, let's just look at facts. Arkane Lyon is currently hard at work on Marvel's Blade, with no release date yet on the horizon. The game entered full production in 2024, and it isn't so far-fetched to think that we may see it soon, within the next couple years at least, assuming it isn't for some reason canceled. This game releasing, though, doesn't necessarily immediately free up Arkane to work on a Dishonored game. In fact, the way I see it, it's not really all that likely. If Arkane's take on Blade is a success, I mean, great, I'd be very happy for them. But it's a little hard to see a success with a major IP like Marvel not changing this studio forever and drastically, if they aren't already far enough removed from the studio that originally made Dishonored. Hard to see Microsoft turning around from a success like that and going, okay, Arkane, you get a little Dishonored as a treat. It's far from the darkest timeline, though. We have yet to see what Blade will even play like, but assuming Arkane has been tapped for this IP to give their unique immersive sim touch to it, then I imagine the game will probably be compelling for many fans of Dishonored, even though it's confirmed to be third and not first person. Time will tell on that anyways, but if it's a commercial success, you can bet Arkane will probably be hard at work on another game within this or another Marvel IP. That's a level of success a Dishonored game could unfortunately only dream of achieving. As good as they are, they're no Marvel. Worse though would be if this game is a failure. I mean, you can forget Dishonored, let alone anything. It may not matter if the studio ultimately gets shut down. And being under Microsoft's thumb at this point, where even successful studios have been canned, yeah, I don't know. Especially given Microsoft wasted no time axing Arkane's Austin arm after just one critical and commercial failure. A generational own goal, really. And don't even get me started on Tango being shut down after the excellent and by all accounts very successful Hi-Fi Rush. I hate to even imagine this possibility that one of the only studios left that has proven capable of making big immersive sims dying. That is just not good. I do not like that. But it's an unfortunate looming reality of the landscape the industry is in at the moment. So in what world does another Dishonored get made? Well, Arkane and Microsoft have clearly seen and even often responded to the hunger that has been shown online for more Dishonored. Dishonored may not have lit up the world with crazy sales numbers or player counts when it first released, but the landscape has changed a lot since the last Dishonored release. And these games have kind of had that latent streaming success thing, where through word of mouth and the games going on sale for dirt cheap pretty often, being on Game Pass, and being given away for free on Epic a few times, I think the games have slowly amassed a much bigger fan base than they ever had on launch. Would this translate to people lining up in huge numbers for a new one? That I don't know. I'd be there, of course, but that could be one takeaway from this social media frenzy. Deathloop, Arkane Lyon's most recent project, could also have some clues. While the popular opinion on this game is somewhat mixed, I do believe that it's probably considered to be at least a modest critical and commercial success. 2021 was a weird year for gaming. There was not a lot of games to feed quite a lot of mouths, so I think Deathloop benefited a lot from that, where in other years it might not have fared so well. But it seems to have sold fairly well, and it even won quite a few awards. I don't think this means there will definitely be more Deathloop, but you don't have to squint to see how Deathloop achieving even a modest success bodes well for more Dishonored in the future. I think my biggest worry, though, is that the cry for more Dishonored will be met, but with the wrong answer. With the most likely scenario, as I see it, being a completely unnecessary outsourced remake or remaster of the first game, which in my opinion still looks and played like it hasn't hardly aged a day, and is in need of pretty much zero updates. Or worse yet, a new game made by some studio other than Arkane that just misses the point. I'd much rather we see no more Dishonored ever than a truly bad or even mediocre Dishonored game. In truth, this could happen anyways. When Arkane Austin closed down, there was reports that something like 70% of the workforce had turned over since the studio made Prey in 2017. The team making Redfall was just decidedly not even the same people. Current Lyon studio director Dinga Bakaba was the design director on Dishonored 2, but the original directors of the game, Harvey Smith and Rafael Colantonio, are now all no longer part of the studio, leaving another Dishonored game to be made yet again by a largely different group of people. I have some faith that between the ethos of Arkane and the very solid groundwork that the Dishonored franchise has already laid, the studio could absolutely strike gold again, but it is always worth remembering that there is nothing particularly sacred about a studio. Games are ultimately made by the people within them. And of course, even the person responsible for the sauce of the first game, Viktor Antonov, who also notably designed Half-Life City 17, is unfortunately no longer with us. Rest in peace. I think another question worth asking is, should there even be a Dishonored 3? Fans of the games are probably like, well, yeah, duh. But humor me while I unpack it a little bit. I wouldn't mind seeing another Dishonored game, especially to revisit the world of Dishonored, explore a new fucked up city or location, use new outsider powers, or whatever equivalent a new game might introduce. But I've also had the itch for more Dishonored kind of scratched by a lot of indie immersive sims, such as Gloomwood and Fallen Aces. And there's even devs taking a crack at something more specifically Dishonored-like. For example, I really enjoyed the demo of a game called Devoid, and I see a ton of potential in it to fill a similar niche to Dishonored. There has essentially just never been a better point in history than right now to be a fan of this genre for many reasons. Additionally, the fracturing of Arkane Austin has given us now multiple studios working on games with a similar ethos to Arkane and Dishonored. I have yet to play Wolfeye Studios, which is Rafael Colantonio's new studio's game called Weird West, which as a top-down action RPG is a little harder to sell as being like Dishonored, but I'm still far from disinterested, and they're also apparently working on a new game as well. Harvey Smith apparently has a new studio that's working on something, and Arkane still exists in some form and continues to make new games. Jury's out on Marvel's Blade, of course, but I'm far from pessimistic about it until we learn more. Well, I think there's reason to be hopeful given that Arkane and Microsoft have clearly seen the outpouring of love for these games. My final question is just, do we really want the reason a new Dishonored game gets made to be because Microsoft now suddenly thinks it will sell well? I'd so much rather it get made because someone at Arkane was feeling inspired with an awesome idea for a third Dishonored that was just too good to pass up, a new story or angle that just had to be explored. I understand that's sort of a naive perspective on how this stuff works, but I just resist the idea that Dishonored turning into an IP that gets quote-unquote milked, for lack of a better term, would actually be a good thing. And lastly, you can always just go play Dishonored. I am honestly not someone who replays single-player games that often, but Dishonored has implanted itself in my brain like a worm. I get the itch every couple of years at absolute most to replay this masterpiece. And every time I do, I'm surprised not only at just how well it's aged, but also how much more there always seems to be for me to discover. I'm approaching 100% achievements on the first game and plan to do the same with the other games as well. Currently, I'm working on a no powers run on stream, or I guess in Dishonored 1, it's like minimal powers, given that you have to to use Blink a couple times, but I've really enjoyed it. I plan to do more playthroughs on my stream of the other games as well, and then a big critique and retrospective video on the main channel coming later this year. If you've watched all the way to the end, I hope you're either a Dishonored fan who has had their love for these games rekindled like I have, or if you're someone unfamiliar, that the outpouring of love for this game has maybe converted you. Either way, thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.